You won't believe what went down at our neighborhood cookout last weekend. My dad, just trying to enjoy a hot dog and mind his business, got ambushed by someone we all secretly call HOA Karen. You probably know the type. Clipboard in hand, eyes always scanning for something to complain about. She stormed over like she was on a mission, finger wagging, accusing my dad of violating HOA rules. Over a grilled hot dog. Yeah, you heard that right, a hot dog. At first, it was kind of funny. My dad just stood there, totally calm, letting her rant about some made-up no food outside the clubhouse rule. But she wouldn't let up. She started raising her voice, making a scene in front of everyone. And the wildest part, she had no clue who she was messing with. What she didn't know, and what made the whole crowd start whispering, is that my dad's not just some random neighbor. He's the guy who runs the HOA's legal committee. Now, imagine her face when she realized she'd just tried to lecture the very person who writes the rules. But we weren't even close to done, because what happened next had the entire barbecue watching in stunned silence. Let's just say she picked the wrong dad to argue with, and things only got messier from there. You'll want to stick around for this one. It goes from petty to personal real quick. So here's where it starts to unravel. Karen, yeah, we'll just call her that, has been a thorn in everyone's side for months. She's not even on the HOA board, but acts like she owns the entire neighborhood. Always filing complaints, nitpicking lawns, checking mailbox heights, basically turning peace and quiet into her full-time job. And ever since the last HOA meeting, where my dad actually pushed back on some of her nonsense, she's had it out for him. But this time, she didn't know she walked straight into a trap of her own making. See, the cookout was totally approved. My dad got it cleared with the HOA ahead of time, permits and all. He even helped plan it to make sure everything followed the rules, especially the grilling setup. But Karen didn't bother checking any of that. She just saw my dad enjoying a hot dog and instantly assumed it was a violation. That's her thing. Make a big scene first. Ask questions never. But as she kept going on about unauthorized food handling and public nuisance, people started gathering. Phones came out. Neighbors were whispering, "Doesn't she know who he is?" And then she said something that really crossed the line. She accused him of misusing his position on the legal committee, like he somehow bent the rules for himself. That's when everything changed. My dad's smile faded. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just looked at her with this calm, serious face. And that's when I knew things were about to shift in a big way. The moment my dad gave her that look, you could feel the energy shift. Karen kept talking, but her voice started to waver just a little, like she could sense something was off. The neighbors didn't step in, but they were definitely tuned in now. And not just because of the drama, but because Karen had stepped on a lot of toes in the past few months. One guy whispered, "Remember when she tried to fine me over my Halloween decorations?" Another neighbor just nodded, arms crossed, watching it all unfold. Now here's where it got even more interesting. My dad didn't say much at first. He just calmly pulled out his phone and scrolled for a second. Then he showed her the HOA email thread. Full approval. Clear as day. She blinked, caught off guard, but then doubled down, accusing him of self-approving the event. That's when Mr. Thompson, who's actually the HOA president, walked over. No one even noticed him earlier, but apparently he'd been standing off to the side, just listening. He didn't say a word either. He just raised his eyebrows, like really, again? Meanwhile, people were starting to talk, not just about the cookout, but about all the stuff Karen's pulled in the past. The time she tried to get a neighbor fined for parking too far to the left, or when she claimed someone's holiday lights were a safety hazard. It was all coming back, and it was clear this wasn't just about a hot dog anymore. This was bigger. Karen didn't back down. Even with the HOA president right there, even with the email proof in my dad's hand, she kept spinning it, saying it wasn't just about permission, but about setting a bad example and favoritism. You could tell she realized she was losing the crowd, And instead of backing off, she doubled the drama. She started raising her voice again, accusing the whole HOA board of being in on it, and claimed the neighborhood was falling apart because of selective enforcement. That's when people really started murmuring. Some were annoyed, others just shocked she was still going. My dad stayed calm the entire time. He's not the type to snap, which honestly made everything more intense. He just stood there, arms crossed, letting her talk while the air got heavier. It wasn't just about a cookout anymore, it was about power, about control, and about someone who'd finally gone too far in a place where people usually just stay quiet to keep the peace. Then out of nowhere, she demanded an emergency HOA meeting, right there in the middle of the event, said she had evidence of misconduct and threatened to take it to the city if nobody listened. She pulled out a folder like it was a courtroom, and that's when Mr. Thompson finally spoke. His voice was low but firm, and all he said was, "Are you sure you want to go down this road, Karen?" Everything went silent. Everyone froze. Even the kids playing nearby stopped. This was it. Something was about to explode. Karen didn't even flinch. She clutched that folder tighter and said, "I've got copies of complaints. Multiple neighbors have come to me. They're just too afraid to speak up." You could feel everyone look around, confused. No one was stepping forward. My dad didn't even look surprised. He just glanced at Mr. Thompson, who looked like he'd heard this story before. But then Karen did something no one expected. She named names. She said my dad had ignored several violations over the past year, including his own landscaping, a supposed noise complaint from 2 months ago, and even an unregistered vehicle that turned out to be my cousin's car during a weekend visit. She listed off these accusations like she'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. You could almost hear her trying to twist everything into something scandalous. And for a second, you could see a few people glance at each other, wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was something to it. But then came the twist. From the back of the crowd, someone finally spoke up. Mrs. Alvarez, one of the quietest and most respected neighbors on the block, stepped forward. She said, "Karen, I am one of those people you claim filed a complaint. And I never said anything like that. In fact, I told you to stop dragging people into your personal grudges." That hit hard. Karen's face froze, and a nervous laugh slipped out, like she hadn't expected to be called out. But it wasn't over. Because Mrs. Alvarez wasn't the only one with something to say, and the folder Karen had. Let's just say it wasn't the only set of documents being carried that day. Just as everyone turned toward Mrs. Alvarez, my dad finally spoke. Calm, steady, but louder now, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If we're going to talk about documents," he said, "let's talk about the complaint forms you've been collecting without board approval." That stopped Karen in her tracks. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. My dad reached into his pocket and pulled out his own folder, an official HOA audit report. He handed it to Mr. Thompson, who flipped through the pages, nodding slowly. Turns out, Karen had been going door to door asking neighbors to sign vague concerns that she later filed as formal complaints, all without verifying them or submitting them through the proper process. Worse, she'd misrepresented herself as part of the HOA board more than once. That was a direct violation of community bylaws. Mr. Thompson looked up, calm but clear. "Karen, we'll be reviewing your actions at the next formal board meeting. Until then, I suggest you refrain from representing the HOA in any way." The crowd went quiet, then a few people started clapping. Karen looked stunned, like she couldn't believe the script had flipped on her. She tried to defend herself, but the momentum was gone. She wasn't in control anymore. And just when it seemed like everything had finally settled, my dad added one more thing. "Oh, and about that unauthorized vehicle. That car belongs to Officer Daniels. He was here for neighborhood patrol." Everyone turned. Officer Daniels, who had been standing quietly in the back, just gave a small wave. Karen didn't say another word. With that, the tension in the air finally started to lift. Karen stood there, her face flushed red, unable to come up with any more excuses. It was clear to everyone that she had underestimated my dad. The cookout, which had seemed so small and trivial just an hour ago, had turned into a full-blown showdown. But now, as the crowd began to disperse and people started talking amongst themselves, it became obvious who had the real power in the neighborhood. Karen turned on her heel and stormed off, not a word more escaping her lips. It was like watching someone realize they'd lost everything in a single moment. As the dust settled, neighbors came over to my dad, offering thanks and even a few jokes about how no one messes with the legal committee. It was clear that everyone had seen through Karen's game. The board meeting she had demanded would likely be her undoing, not the event she had tried to derail. What struck me the most was how my dad handled it. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene. He just showed the truth. And in the end, the truth had done all the talking for him. As we packed up the last of the food and cleaned up, my dad gave me a look that said it all. Sometimes, standing your ground and doing the right thing doesn't require a fight, just patience and integrity. The next HOA meeting came around, and sure enough, Karen wasn't there. She'd resigned her position, quietly, without fanfare. It was a reminder to all of us, the loudest voice in the room isn't always the one that wins.